Hello and welcome back to my channel. Have you ever met someone who seems to have the perfect life? A loving spouse, wonderful children, stability, and yet they feel that something is missing? More and more women are posting videos explaining why they're divorcing their husbands, often prioritizing their own happiness above all else. We never hear the man's side of the story at all. And frankly, it's no wonder so many men are choosing not to get married at all. You know, when they see these videos online of these women who are breaking up marriages for essentially no reason, it can lead to less and less people getting married. In recent years, there's been a noticeable increase in the number of women who initiate divorce from their husbands. Of all divorces, 70 to 80% are initiated by women. There's also an alarming number of women going on social media to confess that the reason they're seeking divorce is not because they've been wronged by their husbands, but because they're just not happy anymore. They report feeling some obscure sense of being unfulfilled in their lives, or that they want to find themselves, as though being married has erased their identity. I think it's time to delve deeper into why so many women feel this way. The term agency in psychology refers to people's ability to act with intention and take responsibility for their actions. People with agency understand consequences and see themselves as having control over their lives by way of their choices. Agency is typically developed in Erikson stages 2 and 3. However, when people lack sufficient agency, it's usually the result of a developmental gap in which a child is never challenged to make hard choices and live with the consequences. This is known as underdeveloped agency, which is a psychological state in which the afflicted person lacks a mature internal identity, making them incapable of directing their lives in an authentic way. A woman named Camille Wight made a video on TikTok describing her recent decision to divorce her husband of 10 years, and the video became viral. Despite describing her husband as the perfect man, she explains that she wants a divorce because she can't be herself around him. She says in the video, "I still don't know who I am." This woman is 32 years old with 3 children. Just by watching the video, you get the feeling that this woman has had a fairly easy life, judging by her demeanor. She is very attractive, and I'm sure when she was 18 to 25, she could have picked any man she desired, but she chose a man who she thought was the best one. You've probably come across this video because it's been featured on other platforms. Her TikTok handle is Chaos with Camille. I'm going to leave a link for the full video in the description below. But I'm just going to play a few seconds of the audio here on my phone so you can hear what she's saying.
I don't know if I'm going to actually post this because this is super vulnerable for me and I'm a pretty open person. But earlier this year, I told my husband I wanted a divorce. And this would probably shock a lot of my friends and my family because I hadn't told anybody, okay? I walked myself through the logistics of where would I live, how would we split the time with the kids, who gets the dog, where all of those things, okay? Had a full breakdown. I feel like I have been searching for something in my relationship that we don't have for the whole time we've been married, which has been 10 years. There is not a single thing about my husband in and of himself that I do not love. Let me be very clear about that. He is the most self-disciplined, loyal, hardworking, good person that you could meet on this planet.
I want to expand on something she says in the video. At first she says that she can't be herself around her husband, and then later says she still doesn't know who she is. Well, if she doesn't know who she is, then wouldn't that mean she can't be herself around anybody? This is a contradiction. In a way, she's blaming her husband for the fact that she lacks a sense of identity, when in reality, This is something that her husband has no control over. If she lacks an identity at the age of 32, that is her problem, not his problem. I've heard other women on the internet saying similar things when they decide to divorce their husbands, claiming that they're missing something in their lives or in their relationships, but they can never pinpoint exactly what it is they are missing. It's some abstract, ethereal concept that they can't seem to put into words, but they are certain that getting a divorce will allow them to seek out and find that precious thing they feel they are lacking. I think it's clear that what they're looking for is their identity or sense of self. So the problem is that most people don't know who they are. I believe that we have a developmental crisis in our society where a vast number of people don't know who they are, and it's causing all kinds of problems. We see people who are unable to maintain stable relationships. Dating is a nightmare. Nobody is getting married, leading to fatherlessness and unreliable homes. The outcome is a host of mental and emotional problems like depression, anxiety, and addiction, along with chronic loneliness. According to Erikson's stages of development, between the ages of 12 and 18 is when a child is supposed to develop their sense of identity, and if they don't, then they are left dealing with what he called role confusion. The goal is for the child to develop a solid and cohesive sense of who they are. They're supposed to develop their values, beliefs, goals, and a vision of themselves in the future. This is also the time for them to discover a stable internal compass, aka a conscience. If a sense of self is not formed during these years, then teenagers will become adults who will live their lives without knowing who they are or what they value. They will feel aimless and without purpose. They will feel hollow inside. These adults will spend their 20s through 40s rotating different identities linked to fashion, outward appearance, career, sexuality, lifestyle, political party, and gender. But these things are material and external and are subject to change. Without an identity, people don't know what they're good at. They don't know how to describe themselves. When people believe their identity is directly linked to their job, their sexual preferences, or their social media presence, it causes them to feel fragile, easily offended, and uncertain. It also puts them into a vulnerable state where they can be easily manipulated. They're susceptible to cult-like thinking. They're also highly reactive, polarized, and tribal. I constantly see people on social media losing their minds over nothing. Anytime someone uses the wrong pronoun or says something mildly offensive, their world falls apart. When something small causes you to have an emotional meltdown, that means your identity is not fully formed. Being offended gives people leverage and virtue signals to other people that they belong in the same clan, but it has nothing to do with inner morality. I think a person's true identity is intersubjective, meaning that it can be understood collectively by two or more people. People can say definitive things about someone's identity as long as that identity shows up consistently, meaning the person is the same at home, at work, with their family, etc. However, that doesn't mean it's fixed or static. Identity can evolve, change, and grow as the result of transformative experiences. A person can learn something new and use that information to tweak their personal beliefs without diluting the density of their identity. Identity can even be destroyed completely and rebuilt, like a forest after a fire. And in this situation, the rebirthed identity will come back stronger and more integrated. This is where the mythical figure of the phoenix archetype comes from. Identity is much more than just forms of expression. It's directly embedded in what we do. The only way to truly know yourself is to test yourself. Every interaction you have with another person is an opportunity to emulate the qualities you wish that you had. If you want to be a better listener, even if you haven't been in the past, that's something you can change today. If you want to be more generous or kind, that's something you can change today. Gender is a little more complex. It's definitely part of who we are because we are shaped by the functions of biology. I'm a woman, and that's going to influence the way I see and think about the world. It's also going to influence the way people see me and treat me. However, I am not just my body or my biology. A person's personality is composed of their ego, thoughts, memories, wishes, and feelings, which are products of the soul, but not the soul itself. The soul is the ultimate essence of who people are. It's an archetypal blueprint that expresses itself in something older than language. The soul speaks in symbols, dreams, and myths. Living authentically reveals the soul and strengthens a person's identity. According to Jungian psychology, a person's self-identity comes from the same place that their moral compass comes from. If you are struggling with forming an identity, you have to take a look at what you value. Decide for yourself what is valuable to you. I want to be clear, I'm not talking about what other people value or what other people think is right and wrong. I'm talking about you personally. What are your preferences? How do you define good and evil? When you have a solid identity, you don't need anyone to affirm it. As long as you live out your principles, no one can question it. For instance, if someone accuses you of being uncaring, yet you know that you're not based on how you live your life, then no one can make you feel like you don't care. No one can deny your validity or your existence. Personally, I've been able to discover aspects of myself while serving in the interest of others and helping people. I think a lot could be gained for some people struggling with identity formation to do some volunteer work, help the homeless, and donate their time to help someone else in need. This can give people a better sense of who they really are, especially when no one is watching. So the cause of this has to do with our culture of comfort and disconnection. I think one thing that is causing this mass confusion over identity has to do with the fact that we did away with societal and gender roles because they were oppressive. But we didn't replace them with anything other than a vague concept of freedom. There are no more roles assigned by society, and now anyone can be in any role they desire. People don't even have to have any kind of role at all. However, I think that having roles such as gender roles would help to alleviate the inner chaos of identity that some people are experiencing because it would give them specific responsibilities that are best suited for their design. We've removed the community models such as church and organized religion that teach kids about identity, values, and respect. The philosophy of individualization fuels a culture that tells us over and over to just be ourselves, live your best life, you do you, and be true to yourself. But we don't provide children with a path that will allow them to discover their true nature. I think another reason why we have a lot of people trying to find themselves is because they reach a point in life where they've never faced something truly difficult because the person's parents solved all their problems for them. When people don't overcome obstacles as children, they lack the tools and coping mechanisms to deal with even greater obstacles in adulthood. The truth is that struggle reveals the true you. The road to self-actualization is paved with pain and suffering. Our ancestors evolved for hundreds of thousands of years alongside suffering. Suffering was ingrained in everyday existence for all of mankind until very recently. For eons, people dealt with death, loss, hunger, and war. Paleolithic people would see half their children die. As an example, if a cave person had an abscessed tooth, there were no dentists. There was no pain medicine except maybe some willow bark, or unless you were lucky enough to live near poppies. The choice was to either forcibly remove your own tooth or die from infection. Therefore, an adult who has never experienced something traumatic is not just an aberration, it's maladaptive. Exposure to adversity is necessary for the development of resilience, adaptability, depth, empathy, and wisdom. We are safe physically, but emotionally delicate and cognitively dissonant. We are digitally connected, but physically isolated. We may have been offered freedom, but we've been cut off from the truth. We must be able to answer questions like, who am I without comfort, and what am I willing to die for? When someone loses their shit over nothing, it's because they've never had to suffer, not really. Because pain, real pain, makes you stop acting like the world owes you comfort. When you have a strong sense of self, you don't need people to affirm you, because you've walked through the fire to meet the real you. Just to be clear, not all trauma is the kind that produces growth. Different types of trauma can break people's psyche, causing emotional harm and long-term effects that never really go away, such as in the case of PTSD. It can also trigger psychosis or mania, activating latent mental illness. It's process trauma that can lead to greater psychological complexity and resilience. People usually grow when they suffer, but feminism has buffered women from receiving constructive feedback while telling them that if they're in distress, it must be at the hands of men or the patriarchy who are oppressing them. This has resulted in vast amounts of women who believe they are perfect the way they are, and that there's no need for self-growth or change. People who can't even imagine that they might be wrong are immune to self-development. I understand how it feels to lack a strong sense of self and question my own authenticity. I've tried using superficial things to find fulfillment, but all I found was more confusion. It feels like there's this inner void inside of you that is ominous and scary, and as a result you avoid stillness so you don't have to face it. It was only through making mistakes and dealing with failures in my life that I was able to become grounded. I encourage anyone who feels lost in this way to be brave enough to face the stillness in all of its discomfort. When you begin to think about different aspects of your life, it will elicit certain feelings inside of you. I challenge you to have the patience to allow your feelings to arise within, because guilt, shame, and regret exist for a reason. I sometimes imagine that I'm steering a ship, and the water is all of my emotions. I want to steer the ship away from rough, stormy waters into more serene waters, using my feelings as a literal compass to guide me. Discovering your identity is something only you can do. Nobody can do it for you. How hardship reveals the soul. It's impossible to live life as a human and not experience any kind of suffering at all. Even the rich and powerful still deal with bereavement, fear, and social isolation. People may argue that suffering is a subjective experience that can only be measured by the person who is experiencing it. However, not all suffering is equal. The main issue, in my opinion, is the absence of threshold experiences, which are significant life events that lead to transformation and a shift in worldview. A threshold experience is a point in time that marks the end of one stage of life and the beginning of the next stage. It's preceded by either a literal death of someone close to you or the symbolic death of your old self and rebirth into a new self. An example from the Bible would be Saul becoming Paul. he had a threshold experience on the road to Damascus. These experiences can happen as the result of a divorce, a nervous breakdown, or even the ending of a career. It causes people to feel disoriented, untethered, and unsure of what is real. It's the tiger burning bright in the forest, William Blake. It's the dark night. It's Jonah trapped in the belly of the whale. These experiences can feel terrifying because you're confronted with undeniable truth, and the false self burns away while the true self remains. People in our time of society are shielded from these experiences, but they are sacred, and our soul craves them, and the psyche needs them in order to be fully integrated. This is the whole idea behind rites of passage. It's supposed to be a threshold experience for adolescence. It's supposed to be difficult and painful. Historically, boys were the ones going through rites of passage because it was believed that nature forces girls into adulthood through menstruation, pregnancy, and giving birth, as these are all painful, life-changing experiences that occur naturally for young women. But it was up to the men of the tribe to take boys from their mothers when they reached a certain age and put them through some sort of threshold experience in the form of a ritual and turn them into men. In conclusion, not having a firm sense of their identity leaves people without a stable foundation to stand on. It feels like there's a murky internal omission, an undeniable, bleak chasm. They feel restless, unstable, and inauthentic, as if they are wearing a mask. Many times people without a strong sense of self experience something called cognitive dissonance, which is a term for the mental discomfort we feel when we hold two conflicting beliefs, values, or behaviors. The contradiction creates inner tension that the psyche needs to resolve. However, without an identity, people don't know what they stand for, which leads them to second-guess themselves and change their persona depending on the people they are with. I believe that Camille Wight and other women like her would benefit way more from self-development than divorce. I believe Camille is experiencing things like cognitive dissonance and the unnerving sense that something is missing from her life, but she fails to correctly identify the problem. Camille feels trapped, but she can't articulate why. Instead of resolving this problem internally through self-reflection, she externalizes her feelings and acts outwardly by seeking divorce and blaming the structure of marriage. She is not oppressed, she's confused. The way she displaces responsibility for her happiness onto her husband and expects certain outcomes without taking ownership of the problem is a sign of underdeveloped agency. I don't know Camille personally, but I'm using her video as an example of a mindset that's affecting modern women in relationships. She's getting a divorce with 3 kids involved. That is sad. I'm not here to chastise her. I only want to use her situation as a case study to analyze a greater trend that's going on. I understand the feeling of emptiness from not having a strong sense of self, as I've said earlier. But as I got older and encountered difficult experiences, my identity became forged within the fire. This is why it's important for people to face their fears and welcome adversity, because even failure is a good thing when it brings you closer to the truth. The search for truth usually involves discomfort because everyone is resistant to change, but without truth, we are all lost. In the future, I'm going to be making a video about self-actualization and the process of discovering your identity in a hands-on, pragmatic way. So I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and if you have any thoughts, leave me a comment down below. I do like my comments, and I will see you guys on the next one.